crisis while at the State Department in Iraq. You've said, clearly you're very opinionated as well, David, and you've said the United States should take in refugees because the United States is the best at vetting them. How is it better than Europe?
Well, for lots of reasons. First of all, the U.S. accepts more refugees than any other country, and that's been going on for decades. So we're more experienced in vetting them and in resettling them to the United States. We also have much better intelligence services than any of the other countries that resettle refugees, and we have a much more significant legal process for resettling them. We're quite good at it, as the statistics show. 785,000 refugees have come since 9/11. Only 3 have ever been arrested for terrorist plots. None have engaged in terrorism, and none of those were Syrians. So that's very important to look at the statistics. We need to concentrate on the ways that terrorists might actually come here, not any possible way that they might come here, because it's very unlikely that they'll come here through the refugee resettlement process.
All right, I want you to take a listen to what some of the Republican candidates for president had to say this week about it.
If there's a rabid dog running around your neighborhood, you're probably not going to assume something good about that dog, and you're probably going to put your children out of the way.
Nobody wants to say this, and nobody wants to shut down religious institutions or anything, but, you understand it. A lot of people understand it. We're going to have no choice. There's absolutely no choice.
Christians who are being targeted for genocide, for persecution, Christians who are being beheaded or crucified, we should be providing safe haven to them.
What do you make of that, David?
Well, I think comparing refugees to rabid dogs is very insulting. Of course, we should be admitting Christian refugees as well, and we do.
Just to be fair here, David, Ben Carson came out yesterday clarifying those comments, saying that they were taken too literally. But continue.
Understood. The point is that there are many good reasons to continue a refugee program. Take, for instance, the fact that anyone who served in Iraq as a diplomat or as a soldier, as I did, during the height of the war, had Iraqis who helped them. And many of those Iraqis really endangered their lives and endangered the lives of their families in order to help Americans. The refugee resettlement program is a reward for some of them, and many of them who when it became too dangerous for them to stay in Iraq, were moved through the refugee resettlement process and brought here. These are people who helped the U.S., and we need to continue to have those types of incentives for people around the world, particularly in conflict zones where the U.S. is active, to help us and to support us. And if they get into too much trouble, if it becomes too dangerous, we need to be able to resettle them as refugees. That's what a refugee is, someone who can't stay in their own country because of fear to their jeopardizing their life.
Here's how the American people feel. I think this is very telling. This is a brand new Washington Post ABC poll. And what it shows when asked the question, should the United States accept Syrian refugees, David, let's pull it up on the screen. 54% say no right now. 43% say yes. And this comes off news that we got last night from our Pamela Brown and Evan Perez from their sources, that a U.S. official says that at least one of the 8 Paris attackers likely would have been able to travel to the United States under the visa waiver program right now. So people are scared.
Well, 2 important points. First of all, we need to do a better job of informing the public of what the refugee program is. We have not done a good job. And some of the comments by some of the politicians that you showed are not helpful. Second of all, talking about a potential terrorist coming through a visa waiver program is a completely different issue. If there are issues with the visa waiver program, let's focus on that. But the statistics show that terrorists have not come here as part of the refugee resettlement program. And in fact, as you mentioned, it takes more than 2 years for a refugee to come here through the resettlement program. It's such an unlikely way for a terrorist to target the U.S. And we need to educate Americans about that.
And to be clear, To be clear here, John Kerry came out, Secretary of State, this week and said there have been over 750,000 refugees to the United States since 2001, and about a dozen, if that, have had any potential concerning ties. But still, all it takes is one. I do want to get your take on this bill that is being proposed formally after Thanksgiving in the United States, the Feinstein-Flake bill. It's set to be introduced, and what it would do is it would keep foreigners who have traveled, David, it would keep foreigners who have traveled to Syria or Iraq in the last 5 years from using the visa waiver program. Do you think that's the right call? Is that a good compromise?
I think that's a pretty good compromise. Of course, it has to be if they've traveled to Syria or Iraq without good reason. There's many people have participated in humanitarian programs or in the military from foreign countries. We wouldn't want to block them simply for their service in Iraq or in Syria. But yes, if someone was in Iraq or in Syria with unexplained purposes and we don't know what they were doing there, yes, that makes sense. That's a good policy. That's the right type of policy we should be focusing on.
All right, we'll see if that makes it through. That'll be formally proposed, we're told, after Thanksgiving. David Tafuri, important perspective. Thank you very much for being with me. And coming up next, new concerns about